Welcome to the Higher Ed Jobs Podcast, Playlist Edition. I'm Andy Hibble, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of HigherEdJobs.
And I'm Kelly Sherwin, the Director of Editorial Strategy. Today, we are happy to have Sarah Westbrook with us. She's our Content Quality Coordinator and Integration Specialist. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. So glad to be here.
Sarah, we received an email that you were interested in sharing some musical thoughts for the playlist. And before we kind of get into a little talk of musical discussion, we were just kind of talking a little bit about what you do for Higher Ed Jobs. So maybe explain a little bit of that. Because I'm not sure content quality coordinator and integration specialist will be something a lot of people are familiar with. But maybe explain to folks what you do here at Higher Ed Jobs.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I'm the content quality coordinator, which is essentially somebody who manages the website that users see when they come and look for a job. So any job that's posted on our site, I make sure that it's posted correctly. It's legible for job seekers to see and find. I make sure that the text is okay. I make sure that the schools that do have the information, that it comes to us correctly. And I make sure that all the schools that we work with, that their jobs get posted effectively every single day.
You shared with us that you recently started at Higher Ed Jobs in May, and you came from higher ed before that. So we're so glad to hear that you have, some insights into higher ed.
Yeah, it's been great. And just, a shameless plug, I found all of my higher ed jobs from HigherEdJobs.com. So it really is a great website to use if there's job seekers out there that are looking to break into the higher ed career path. I definitely would use our site. It's so good. There's so much information. The categories, this is another part that I'm a part of, making sure that jobs are in the right categories. You can really search for anything and find your niche.
Thank you. We very much appreciate that. And it makes our hard work makes it very worthwhile. One of the interesting parts, how many of your Higher Ed Jobs colleagues have you met face to face?
So believe it or not, haven't met any of you guys except for on Zoom. I am in Dallas, Texas. And all of my colleagues are on the East Coast. So that is very interesting. We've just had our conversations via Zoom, but you know what? It really has worked out to its benefits. We connect and have team meetings and all the things. And it's been great. I haven't had any issues.
We here in the Chicago offices of Higher Ed Jobs, and I know from my visits over the years to the Pennsylvania office in State College, that music was always being played in the cubicle area, and there definitely was a pattern to it. Kind of since 2020, there's obviously not been music in that area quite the same way. But when we received the email from you about the playlist edition, you had shared with us what you had set up for yourself and your other colleagues, some who are also remote from where your team is based, which is in the Pennsylvania office. Tell us a little bit of what you have set up for your colleagues on the content quality team.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on that. So second weekend, I'm meeting with the team and we're all discussing our hobbies and things we like to do outside of the office. And outside of the office, I love fitness. I was a fitness trainer for several years, and playlists have always been a big part of my community. And I've always been told that, hey, you've got some really cool music selections. You've always come up with great playlists. Can you do that? So I figured, since we're in a remote environment, why don't I just make playlists? Let's see if the team is open to that. It'll be something that I do once a week. So it's something expected from the team. Like, hey, Sarah's going to make a playlist for us. I gathered, what kind of genres does the team kind of gauge and like. And I said, okay, I'm going to make a playlist. So that first week, I got rock. Rock was the theme, and I love rock from back in the 90s and early 2000s. It's kind of my era. So I stemmed from that. Also looked at the age group that I'm working with because, you want to include everybody. So I started making playlists. And ever since then, it's been received very well from the team. The whole gist of it was just to bring 40 to 60 minutes of entertainment and fun to your workday, because we've all been there. It's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the hour is just taking forever to go by. And you just need that extra push. And for me, having music in the background, especially if it's songs that I know and love and adore, it makes work so much fun. So that's kind of how all of this started. And every week I've been coming up with new themes. This week I circled back to rock, but I've had themes from feeling groovy to 80s summer to throwbacks, you name it. So that's kind of how all of this started.
I love it. I love the passion. And I love that you are building team and community. Like, you said you're working remotely and haven't met anyone in person. And I think this is common in obviously today's workplace. We're connecting remotely with a team. So that's great. I'm sure everyone on the team appreciates that.
And I really loved when you sent the playlist. There were very specific instructions on how to listen to the playlist. Can you share that with everybody?
Yeah. So again, this is from the fitness instructor in me. One of my pet peeves is whenever a song ends, depending on the song that's coming up next, there's a pause or it takes a while for the next song to start. Well, to combat that, if you're on Spotify, in your settings, you go to the playback and you can adjust your crossfade. So that means when the song ends, the next one begins. However many seconds. For me, I have mine defaulted to 12 seconds. I think that's the highest you can go. And it just kind of fades in. And I'm telling you, if you are the person that has the aux at the party, you are the certified DJ. Okay, so you've got the cool points right there. So those were the instructions I felt, when I do create playlists, I do take a lot of pride in it. I think of every single song and I think of the order and just the flow of how it sounds with headphones in the office doing your work. And I think it flows together. So that's why I say, try to listen to the playlist in that order. The first round, you do what you want after the fact. But yeah, that's how I came up with everything. And those were the instructions that I sent out.
I do have to comment on the first song in the first playlist, the rock playlist that you had mentioned. It was the Smashing Pumpkins' Tonight Tonight, which actually came out in 1996 while I was still living in State College, but was actually looking to move to Chicago. And I used to listen to that song while driving around the streets of State College. If you're from State College and listening, as you know, there's good radio, but it can be spotty within the mountains, and it's the mid-90s. So I used to listen to that song and think about moving to Chicago because there's a reference to the city by the lake because the Smashing Pumpkins are from Chicago, and thinking, oh, wow, wouldn't it be cool to live in Chicago and be there? And it's funny that would be the first song that you would select for the playlist. And it kind of warmed me when I'm like, wow, that's really, really cool that you put that on there. It's a song that's very special to me.
She channeled.
Wow, that's a full circle moment. Full circle moment. I love that song just as much as you do. Great opener.
I think we can agree that Sarah is our residential playlist expert. So I can tell that you are thinking deeply about music and the meanings behind it. So what was the song that you chose that you want us to add to the playlist, and why did you choose that one?
So I will choose my most recent song because when I was thinking about this, I was like asking myself in my head so many different questions. Like, well, what kind of mood am I in? What kind of genre do I want to listen to? Is it an album? Is it a mixtape? Is it an EP? Like, what is this? So the first song I'm going to have to say is Till I Collapse by Eminem and Nate Dogg. And the reason why I picked that song was because while I was searching for jobs in this time that we're in, that search was the hardest search I've had to experience in my job seeking time. It was so difficult. And that song came on one night when I was super frustrated looking through jobs and just not getting a response, or just having to do what I like to call the most with a job application. You upload your resume, you upload your cover letter, and then they ask you, well, list your experience here. So here you are, copying and pasting all the things. And Till I Collapse came on. It was probably like 11:30 at night. And I felt like that. I felt I'm going to do this until I can't do it anymore. And that was kind of the song that played on repeat. And since I listened to it at night, that following morning, I had it in my head again. And I said, okay, here's the start of the day. We're going to make this happen again. All or nothing till I collapse. We're going to make this work. So that's the song that I decided to choose for today. It'll change again the next day, the next week. But for today, it is Till I Collapse by Eminem and Nate Dogg.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful song. And thank you for sharing the backstory to it, because I think it really gives it a lot of perspective and something that I'm sure there's a lot of shared feelings for with other people who are currently looking for a job.
Well, and I will say, selfishly, we are glad that you didn't give up and didn't collapse, because it led you to higher ed jobs. And I think this can be a motivator for other job seekers. Don't give up. You just never know when that next opening or that break is going to happen. So that's a great inspirational story and song. So you said my first song, did you have another or more? Do you have a whole playlist that you're sharing with us?
I have several, and you know what? I can share one more song, and I think it's relevant right now because it just dropped. It's by Beyonce. It's called Break My Soul. And she says in her song, "You won't break my soul." And she's telling people to leave those toxic jobs. I don't recommend if you're not ready to leave, but it's a great song. So very dance vibes, 90s vibes. It's a great song. I love it. So that's the second song.
Oh, that's a great recommendation.
That is a great recommendation. Before we leave you, did you have a question or two for us that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. So as I was talking about me coming up with playlists for the team, and since I'm a newer associate here with HigherEdJobs, one of the things that I like to do is, get familiar with our software systems and all the things. And I stumbled upon our podcast page. And when I saw that there was a playlist podcast, I flipped. I was like, how did these people read my own mind? I was creating these playlists for my team for about a month. And then I see that, hey, there's other people that think the same things you do. I want to know, how did you come up with the playlist? Like, how did you decide to incorporate music into your workspace, essentially? How did you do that?
I'm going to take this one because I'm not sure there were all equally willing participants in this process. And I was probably the one who felt most strongly about this. But I remember back for my job search, getting my first job at Penn State, where I met John and Eric and kind of provided the inspiration for us thinking about higher ed jobs, that music was a very big part of it. And I kid you not, first song I put on the playlist, I remember listening to Tom Petty's The Waiting and saying, this waiting, it truly is the hardest part, just waiting this thing out, because as much as you can do all of these things, which you need to do, keeping that attitude positive and understanding the process is going to be the process. And there's multiple people in this process, and it's not just you, was something I was constantly reminding myself of. And I listened to a ton of music. And as I worked and through the years, I kept listening to music. And it was really kind of tied to when I was in law school back in the early 90s, everybody used the computer lab as you wrote a paper. There's about 30 computers in the computer lab. It was all people who I'm friends with. And if you wanted to sit there and get work done, you definitely needed to listen to something because there was always conversation going on. So when I went into the computer lab, I used to listen to, and I kid you not, usually The Clash, but almost always punk rock, as loud as I can to drown out all of my friends and keep me concentrating. And as I've worked over the years, constantly listening to music, listening to new music, talking to people about music, I know over the years of higher ed jobs, I don't know how much music Eric Blessner and I have shared with each other, but we have shared a ton of music and gone to so many concerts. And I know for him as well, it's such a big part of our work day that as we looked at the podcast and doing this, it was something that we thought we wanted to share with folks and bring something a little bit lighter and a different way to tell the story of job search.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing.
We're so excited about your willingness and passion and excitement for music.
And we do look forward to having you back and getting your perspective as you settle into your role.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I look forward to connecting with you guys soon. I love music, all different types, and it's my happy place. So thank you guys.
Thank you for joining us.
And if you have any questions for any of us, including Sarah, about playlist, about music, about job search, please feel free to email us at podcast@higheredjobs.com or tweet us at HigherEdJobs and let us know what you're interested in hearing. Thanks again for listening to the Higher Ed Jobs Podcast Playlist Edition. Please join us again.